Hi there. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. I'm here to talk to you about Renforth Resources. As Gilbert kindly told you, we trade under the symbol RFR on the CSE and RFHRF on the OTCQB exchange. So we are, as here we go, we'll get my PowerPoint up and running. As Gilbert said, we're located in the province of Quebec. We are right now, we have two main assets, which makes it a little tricky to explain Renforth to people. However, I'll do my best. We are largely concerned with our Surimo property, and as it hosts EV battery metals, that's probably the one you're concerned with as well. We do hold the Parbec gold deposit on the Cadillac Break as well. So Surimo, what I'll focus on today, is huge. It's greater than 300 square kilometers. It is near the town of Malartic. It's contiguous to the Canadian Malartic Mine, which is Canada's largest open pit gold mine. There's road access to the property in several places. Highways run through the property, and there's also hydroelectric power lines bisecting the property from the two hydroelectric dams you can see south of the property in the map on the screen. Being located near Malartic, which is about the center between Rouen, Miranda, and Val d'Or, gives us access to just about anything and everything you could think of to run an exploration company. And we're in the province of Quebec, so we're well located in terms of security and rule of law. And we've got the mineralizations. We're not exploring for nickel, copper, gold, cobalt, zinc, or PGE elements. We have them already. So, of course, I'm not impartial. I am the president and the CEO of Renforth, so you're always encouraged to do your own due diligence. Now, we've covered, we're publicly traded. We're based in Pickering, Ontario, just east of Toronto, 278 million shares outstanding. And our portfolio really is, the headliner for our portfolio is Surimo and our Parbec gold deposit. And then we do have other assets that I'm not even going to talk about today because I have enough to tell you about those two. So what else do you need to know? We have money. We've got about $1 million in the bank right now, a bit more. And we have investments that are worth more than $3 million. And ultimately, we have a gold in the ground at our Parbec gold deposit. So we are focused on Surimo. We are working in the background as we speak on Parbec, and it is quite likely that at some future point, Parbec could be sold in order to provide additional capital on a non-dilutive basis to advance Surimo even further. Moving along. I'm not going to read the presentation to you because you guys can do that. Suffice to say, we're in a very interesting neighborhood. I think you can see my arrow that's scrolling around, but Surimo in red on this map has some interesting neighbors. In orange, you have Agnico Eagle. They are the 50% owner of the Canadian Malartic Mine, which is Canada's largest open pit gold mine. It's there in yellow. In lime green is Radisson Gold Deposit. It's also a company that we hold 12 million shares in. We sold a property, my successful M&A background. We sold a property to them, and we hold that as a keystone investment, as well as some other companies in the neighborhood looking for lithium largely. Now, Surimo is a big property. As I told you, it's greater than 300 square kilometers, numerous areas of mineralization. And our neighbors, I'm only touching on this because our neighbors are looking for lithium, and we do have some lithium targets present on our property right now, although, to be honest, it's not our highest priority. Why is it not our highest priority? Well, if you look at the blue dots on this map, you'll see that we have outlined 6 different areas where we have polymetallic mineralization, being the EV battery metal suite of primarily nickel, ultramafic intrusive, which is hosting nickel and cobalt, which we see in the existing government airborne magnetics. This trend in the center of the property, the lower of the two orange trends, is more than 20 kilometers, which appears in geophysical surveys as a high mag. And the mag is showing us, we know for a fact, the nickel and the copper, or the nickel and the cobalt, sorry. So we're focused on Victoria, which is the western end of the 20-kilometer anomaly, where we have 6 kilometers of this battery mineralization. At the eastern end of that anomaly, we have the Colony mineralized occurrence. To the north, we have Lalonde, which has been drilled historically and seen a fair bit of work outlining mineralization over 2 kilometers. To the northwest, we have the Houston target, where we made a discovery grab sample in an initial prospecting program. We have to follow up on that. You can see Houston is also associated with another very high magnetic feature. And to the south, we have Fouillac, where we've done some very preliminary work, and Surimau in the northwest, where we've also done some preliminary work. So that's a lot on our plate in terms of the EV metals. We're not going to touch the gold on the property. It is documented. It's fairly low grade, but large, extensive gold associated with an intrusive around Surimau. And in the north at Beaupré, we have a copper silver discovery we made. 8% copper on surface. We traced over 165 meters. We will do some more work on that. So you can see why Surimau is our focus. There's a lot going on, and we have mineralization already in a lot of areas and lots of follow-up. As I said, we're going to focus on Victoria West, though. It's 6 kilometers long. It's on surface. It has road access. And already, with only 5,000 meters drilled, because we've only had the property assembled and done work on it for the last year, we've already established that the Victoria West showing, or Victoria West system at Surimau, can stand within its peers of other large-scale, low-grade nickel deposits. But Victoria has the benefit of also having the cobalt, copper, the zinc, and the PGEs, which come into to raise the nickel grade on a nickel equivalent basis. And we haven't even finished testing the PGEs yet. We haven't done the nickel equivalency work yet. We have a lot still to do, but we're quite excited about it. Now, backstopping all of this, and you'll find more information on Parbec at the back of the presentation in the appendix. However, I'll touch briefly on Parbec. You saw its location on the map, and it's sitting on 1.8 kilometers of what's referred to as the Cadillac Break. Cadillac Break is Canada's most prospective gold structure. It runs through Ontario into Quebec, and it terminates at Val d'Or. So we're in some very prosperous areas of the Cadillac Break, and we are right next door to Canada's largest open pit gold mine. The interesting thing about Parbec is it's one of the last little bits of the unmined Quebec Abitibi Cadillac Break that's very prospective, or that has a deposit outlined. There is a decline in place. It was going underground to bulk sample the mineralization, and that never occurred. Now, we completed some transformative drilling. We drilled 15,000 meters between 2020 and 2021 in 2 programs. And what we were doing was interesting on a couple levels. The first thing we were doing, we were twinning some of the blue drill holes you see on this image. Why were we doing that? Because even before we started work, we knew that our 2020 resource statement was out of date. It excluded all the historic drilling in blue because we don't have the witness core. We had everything else we needed, but we were told we can't use it, and we had to restate a previous higher resource. So we re-drilled some of those holes with our drill holes in red, and that validates those holes. So that's 13,000 meters of drilling we're going to add to the 15,000 meters we just drilled to put towards our next resource update, which means we're taking an existing resource that has about 28,000 meters at most of assay data in it, and we're adding another 28,000 meters of assay data. It's going to be an interesting update because you can see that the blue, the concentrated, the most explored historic area is what was taken out of the May 2020 resource. So we twinned holes, we filled gaps with our red drill holes. We also tested down dip successfully. So we continued our streak of every hole Renforth drilled at Parbec. We've returned gold numbers, which is great. So stay tuned. In the background right now, as we speak, we have a structural geologist building the first ever structural model for Parbec. And we also have a resource geologist QP group working on the very early work that leads to calculating a new resource estimate. That's all I'm going to say about Parbec. You can find more in the appendix. If you want, if you have any questions, you can track me down. I'm visible on all the social media channels. You can email me, Nicole@renforthresources.com, if you want to talk about Parbec. So what am I going to continue to do? I'm going to continue to talk to you about Surimo. Surimo, this slide is in order to try and illustrate to you, if you're familiar with Toronto, the size of Surimo. You can see that it's covering downtown Toronto. Toronto in the GTA is about 600 square kilometers. Surimo is about half that. So it's a vast property. And, you know, we're concentrating our attention over 6 kilometers right here. But you can see just in terms of actually covering the ground, how much ground we have still to cover. And some of it, if we go back to the if we go back to our geophysics image, you can see we do have targets. We have known mineralization and we have geophysical trends to follow up on. So it is a large property, and it's very early to make a statement or a conclusion about the entire property based on the results we've received so far. So we're quite excited to be exploring this. Why are we excited? I mean, look at me. Why am I excited about some what could be considered low grade, although it's comparable grade to the Dumont deposit to the north of Surimo, about an hour and a half, is the Dumont deposit, which was privatized by the Waterton Private Equity Group. Very expensive transaction. We're also comparable to, you've probably heard about the Crawford deposit of Canada nickel. Our grade, our numbers are in the same ballpark. So we stand amongst our peers appropriately. And we're in a stage right now, we're looking at critical and strategic metals, of which nickel, zinc was just determined to be strategic by the US government. Copper, cobalt, the platinum and palladium, which is what the PGE group is. These are all critical and strategic as we move into an energy storage future. EVs, you know, you get into the infrastructure argument where you're seeing Biden showed up at the site of a collapsed bridge to talk about infrastructure money in Philadelphia. So we need all these metals. We need these metals desperately. Pretty much consensus amongst analysts that while there might be sufficient metals right now, it takes 5 years to bring a mine on stream, and there's a deficit coming with no new mines slated to go into production. So Surimo gives us all the metals we need. It gives us those metals in a good jurisdiction. ESG benefit, you know, is a part of our daily existence, and it gives us a secure North American source. Most of the critical and strategic metals in the world are controlled by China. Whilst they may not have them in country, they do own the rights to a lot of the materials, and they're exclusively doing a lot of the processing, specifically around the EV story. So what have we done at Surimo? Well, we've our 5,600 meters drilled. We drilled 2.2 kilometers of the 6 kilometers of mineralization off. The deepest drill hole we've drilled, or the deepest pierce point we have, is 150 meters. And in fact, the results from that hole are still pending. The last 7 holes we drilled right before Christmas, we do not have the assay results in yet, although we do have visual mineralization in each of those holes. So we're quite confident we'll have some interesting assays once they're received. What else are we doing that's exciting? Well, we're commencing a geophysical survey probably in the next week and a half. That geophysical survey will be mag combined with EM. EM has never been flown, and that will give us a better look at the mineralization, and it'll help us create drill targets. So the holes I'm waiting for assays on still are the 7 holes in red on this map. They are right under an area where we stripped. We got consistent mineralization on surface in the stripped area, along with more copper than we expected, partly because we cannot see the copper in the geophysical survey we have. The EM might help us see the copper. So we were really targeting nickel when we did the drilling, all our drilling so far, because we can see the nickel. We know where the nickel is. So to see more copper when we did the stripping was a pleasant surprise. We have an example here for you of what the metals in drill holes actually look like. Every drill hole we're drilling, we're seeing these metals. And again, we've gone down as deep as 150 meters, which is nothing. 6 kilometers long and as deep as 150 meters, we're looking at an open pit target. In red, you'll see on this slide the extent of the airborne survey we're going to fly. And this slide talks about the airborne survey a little bit. This is interesting because not only is this survey going to fly from Victoria West in the west to Colony in the east, because there is a geophysical relationship between these two, but there's no exploration through here. So we could maybe extend our 6 kilometers of mineralization right through this 14 kilometers before we get to Colony right over here at the end. But Lalande to the north was drilled historically. We've not done anything more than surface sampling, and we'd like more information on that because that's probably the next place you'll see us drill. So this survey should be flown in about 2 weeks. So what do we expect? Right now, based on what I see right now, we expect to outline a 6 kilometer open pit target, a deposit, if you will, of nickel, copper, cobalt, and zinc. And then the PGEs are there. We just can't really talk to you about the numbers yet because we've only done limited testing. The other thing we've done is very early stage metallurgical testing of surface samples we took a year ago. And those surface samples gave us, they verified to us that we're dealing with sulfide nickel. We took the samples and we did comparative assay work whereby the sulfide nickel would not be accessible in one assay. Mathematically, it proved to us that we have a minimum of 68% sulfides in the nickel. This is good. This points to class 1 battery nickel. And we've got it in a couple places. So throughout the property. Now this property is about an hour, if you go back in the presentation, it's about an hour away from Rouyn-Noranda, which has the Horn smelter owned by Glencore. Glencore is recycling battery metals there as we speak. They're capable of doing the smelter work that anything mined at Surimo would need in order to bring it to market. So we kind of have a customer sitting on our doorstep, and the only customer in Canada who can actually process the material in Canada. And then they further refine it in Montreal, in fact. So we're moving forwards. We're moving forwards with Victoria West at Surimo, but we know Lalande is also meaningful and outlined currently over 2 kilometers, and we have many other areas of interest. The other thing that's interesting of Surimo is I acquired it mainly by staking. So the property is wholly owned, all 300 kilometers of it. And there's no costs associated with that. The only costs to survive are the typical costs to keep claims in good standing in Quebec. And the only patent that exists on the property is, well, I can show you because it's hard to describe. The only area with a patent is right up in here, if you can see the arrow. But in any case, it's at the very top northeastern corner where it was meant to be a gold target, but we haven't found any gold there, on surface at least. And the existing NSR has no impact whatsoever on the EV story. So we've got a low cost property to maintain. We've got surface mineralization with road access in a macro environment that desperately needs these metals. We can keep the company alive. We've got more than $1 million in the bank and another 3 million or so sitting in our trading account. We can keep the company going on what we have for quite some time. The money gets spent, it goes in the ground to drill. There's no big staff to Renforth. The CFO and myself are consultants, and we take our compensation in shares pretty much annually. I've never received a paycheck from Renforth. I've been putting all the money in the ground in order to find our next big discovery, and as well trying to mature our next M&A target in Parbec. So that's the big story. The story really is Surimo. You can read my presentation as you go through the appendix here. You'll see a little bit about fundamentally there's no metals to meet the climate change targets. There's a lot of lack of security in North America for critical and strategic metals because most of them are being, they're owned by the Chinese, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. That sounds bad, but it means that if you want to build batteries in North America, you have a problem if you can't get a hold of the metals, or you only have one place you can go for the metals. You can read these slides about just outside of the EV issue, the growth in the world's population, along with the mobility of the world's population from lower to middle class. All of these place infrastructure demands on metals, which have a whole new paradigm, a whole paradigm shift come in here where there's a completely new demand on these metals, which is EVs, batteries, energy storage, climate change. So the markets were already tight for these metals. They're only going to get tighter. Now you can shift gears in the appendix back to Parbec, and you can see some of the best drill holes we drilled. In fact, these are the top 10 from the program we drilled in terms of metal factor. There's the resource, but here are the high assays and the notable intervals from Parbec in its entirety. You'll see there's a lot of 20 and 21 here, but I want to point out to you the 86, 87, 93, those were excluded from the 2020 resource. You can see some of the caliber we'll bring back to our new resource. So that's it. Surimo, strategic metals backed by a gold deposit, which we will likely look to sell later this year. And drill results coming. So that's it. We'll have drill results out. We'll fly our airborne and we'll get back out there drilling again. Lots of news to keep you occupied. You can sign up for our newsletter at our website and follow us on pretty much any social channel you can think of. So lots of info. Sorry, tried to be short and sweet. Went too long, but I appreciate your attention. That's it, Gilbert.
Hi, Nico. So a couple of questions here. One from Saidu here. Does the public give you any out of the value for both Surimo and Parbec, or just mostly one of them?
Probably just Parbec. If the value we get, it would be coming from Parbec. There's Surimo's very early stage still. I mean, 5,600 meters drilled. It was a big deal to drill it. Very interesting information, but a very small amount of drilling, all things considered. So Surimo, we're just starting to really tell the story about Surimo now.
Sure. Just one last question here from Ming. So is that true that your exit strategy is to divine a good resource and then sell it to the other bigger companies?
In the case of Parbec, yes. In the case of Surimo, no. I mean, Surimo, we have something. I'm pretty sure I have something big on my hands. I'm not looking to play with it for a little while and sell it on. Parbec, I think we will restate the resource and demonstrate the additional potential through the structural study. We would sell Parbec in order to fund exploration at Surimo, but no, Surimo, we're pushing this one all the way down the road. So you can never say never. You never know what's going to happen. I can't see the future, but in my head, no, we're working this one.
Sure. Wonderful to hear. So thank you for your time here today, Nicole.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a wonderful day.